Now the loops, I showed you the each iterator, but there's another loop that you will see occasionally called a for in loop. Now if you're a Java person, the resemblance to the for each loop is probably not a coincidence, but notice I didn't have to declare the data type on the individual element. So this is like saying for each team in the teams collection, see there's my teams collection, I'll print out the name like that. The while loop just looks exactly like it does in Java. Again, we'll use it if it comes up. There is no do while loop. That's about the only construct in all of Java that does not work in Groovy at all. Conditionals, we have the if and if else. We also have a switch statement that's extremely powerful, but I'll show it to you when we download the code. I'll show you an example inside there. This is that stuff about the Groovy truth. Non-null object references are true, and patterns that match are true, and non-empty collections or non-zero numbers, all those are true. Miscellaneous. Let me show you this this guy right here. So say I have a class called department. Actually, I don't think I want to call it department. What the heck. And inside there, I'm going to have a manager, boss. And here's my class called manager. And inside the manager, I'm going to have a name. And then I say, let's make a department equals a new department, which has in it as under the boss field a new manager, which has in it under the name field Mr. Slate. And now I want to print out dep.boss.name. No problem. Walked all the way down, but everything was filled in. See? And notice how I use the attribute to inside the constructor to assign the inner object here. All the way down in the manager has a name. I'm able to use this map-based constructor on manager as well. But what if I was to say instead, dep is a new department, and I don't put in the manager or the name. So this is a completely different one. Now I get a null pointer exception. You cannot get the property name on a null object. See, it went get boss and came back with null because boss by default is null. So if this was Java, what I'd have to do is I'd say if dep.boss is not null, then if dep.boss.name is not null, then print line dep.boss.name. I know I could clean this up. I'm just trying to show. Else, I'd have to say print line null, and then I'd have to close the outer one and say also, sorry, close else, print line null. So I'm basically saying if dep calls get boss and it's not null, great, I'll go on. Otherwise, I'm going to print null at that point. If I get the boss and I call get name and that's not null, then I'll print it, else I'll print null. And I got all these nested if statements. I mean, it's quite a mess, you know. Or I can do in Groovy. Let's comment all that out. Actually, I don't need to comment it out. I'll just use it. So what you see here is it prints null for this one, and then this still failed. But here's the Groovy approach. I go question mark dot, question mark dot. And what this is short for is saying, is dep not null, question mark? Then call get boss. If get boss is not null, question mark, call get name. If either of these are null, just return null. And now I'm fixed again. Isn't that nice? I mean, you remove all these nested if statements, all having to do with nulls, by just putting in the question mark dot. You would be amazed. This one little bit of syntax wins over more Java developers than you can imagine. I mean, Java people just love that, you know?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, quick questions. Would that syntax also work for like you know, if you verify other stuff, like some content of a string or something like that?
Yeah, it's using the Groovy truth. So if it's false by the Groovy truth, you get back null. So it's the same as saying if not null and not empty. That's probably the easiest way to think about it.
Cool.
Okay? Yeah, really useful that way. I mean, very helpful. And it's just a tiny little bit of syntax and it saves so much trouble. But I also have to tell you about Elvis. Elvis. And yes, this is going to be kind of silly. You know, I admit it, but here it is. So let's say that somebody submitted a form, and I'm going to get the value of it, of a name, say. And the thing is if they didn't submit name, or if the name is empty, I want to use the word world because I want to go hello world. So I'm going to say string name equals, and let's say they submitted it as an n. You know, I'll say if n is not null and n dot size is greater than 0 question mark, then use n, else use the word world. Now let me put this in parentheses, might make it a little easier to read. Okay, the idea here, it says if n is not null, then go and check to see if the length of the name that was submitted is greater than 0. See, the and here does what they call short circuit. The Java people know this, but for the non-Java people, what happens is if n is null, then this is false and this is an and condition. Well, false and an and condition can never be true. Doesn't matter what's on the right-hand side. If it's false on the left, and is false. So therefore, it doesn't even evaluate what's on the right-hand side. And that's good because if n is null, I don't want to go n dot anything or I'll get a null pointer exception. So this is called short circuiting. It's pretty common in the Java world to protect yourself by doing something like this. So I'm saying if n is not null and n dot size is greater than 0, because maybe they did submit a value, but it's an empty string. Well, I don't want to use hello empty string. I want to put it in world then. But if it isn't null and it isn't an empty string, then we'll use it. Otherwise, we use the word world. Now, in Groovy, that was basically Java. In Groovy, I noticed that, n not null. Well, by the Groovy truth, if n is null, that's false. I'm done. I don't have to compare it to null. I could just say n. And oh yeah, by the way, an empty string is also false. So I don't have to do that either. So I could just write n question mark, then use it, colon, world. This operator, by the way, with the question mark and the colon, is called the ternary operator because there's 3 arguments to it. And all it is an if statement lying on its side. It says if n, then use n, else use world. Okay? And then some Groovy person was looking at this going, well, why am I repeating n? You know what I mean? I already know. I just want to say if it's true by the Groovy truth, if it's not null and not empty, just use it. So why not just reduce it down to n, question mark, and then colon, and then world? The assumption being is that if n is not null or empty, use it, which is what would be in here. Otherwise, use world. And after that, somebody looked at this operator and they turned their head on the side and went, oh, a little curly Q, that's Elvis. It's a reach. It really is, isn't it? Yeah, but that's what they call it. They call it the Elvis operator here. So if I was to print line, now here let's give n, declare n. So if I print line what I was planning, which was hello $name, like this, then I get hello world because n was null. And I went through all 3 of these. If I say, oh, well, let's set it to an empty string, still I get hello world, even if it's an empty string in Groovy. There it is. Okay? So that's called the Elvis operator. And this is a page here. The page shows the safety reference operator, null safe. That's the one I mentioned first. And there's Elvis, and that's not as good an example. I like this example better. So maybe I'll paste that into the notes here. Elvis example. And then I'll just change the format here. And there you go. I know I'm making the font a little bit bigger here, but I think it's somewhat easier to read the code if it looks vaguely like that. So there you are. So that was that was Elvis right here. They also mentioned again in the materials that everything's an object so that you can invoke methods on numbers, like this down to method. And again, this takes two arguments, the first argument being a number and the second one being a closure. But I normally wouldn't write it like that. I normally would have written the 5 in parentheses and then just put the closure after the 5. I mean, this is legal. The comma is what's telling down to that there's two arguments, but I like the parentheses just as well. So again, in Groovy, size matters. I know that's awful, but it's easy to remember. Java arrays have length, and strings have a length method, and lists have size. We have getLength, and Groovy just use size everywhere. So that's that whole section. Now that doesn't have the stuff in it that we went over about the XML parsers or slurpers. It doesn't have anything about the JSON parsers or slurpers. And we didn't talk about any of the metaprogramming stuff. But I am going to talk about metaprogramming later a little bit to try to help you understand it in the context of Grails. And as I say, this was a fair amount of, I mean, we really kind of covered a lot of ground here. If you're kind of confused by all this, then that's not surprising. If you're a Java developer, you may not be totally confused. You just may say, wow, that's a lot of stuff. If you're not a Java person, then yeah, that was a lot. And all I can tell you is that when we hit Grails, life, believe it or not, will actually be a bit simpler for a while, and then we'll cover some of the more in-depth issues. Now, the last thing I want to do today is have you download the code and try to build it and make sure that's working on your machine. And that way, tomorrow morning, what we'll do is we'll start off by starting up the Groovy and Grails tool suite and then importing the code. Now, let's do this in a couple of stages. So first of all, here is the link. Let's see. This is my GitHub repository, and I'm going to go directly to. By the way, I could never get rid of that picture because I'll never have that much hair again. But so be it. Here is a project I have here called Intro Groovy. Okay, and I'm going to copy this and paste it into our notes. So this is Groovy example source code is at this link here, github.com/my last name cousin/intro groovy. Hopefully you can either click on that or you'll be able to access it yourself. Once you get to this page, again, if you have Git installed, and here, let me scroll down. See, there's a little README which is rendered like HTML, and you can see here that if you have, this is to build it. Let me talk about downloading it. If you have Git installed, you see this link right here, this information, you would just click on copy to clipboard and you would type, you'd pick a directory and call git clone and then paste the value in, and it would download everything for you. Now, for those of you who do not have Git installed or don't want to deal with it, you see there's a button here that says zip on it. It says download this repository as a zip file. Feel free to just click on that and download it and unzip it somewhere. Okay? So if you could do that now and let me know when you're finished, I'll show you how to build the code after that. So just type something in the chat box or say something on the audio to say that you're done when you've got that unzipped somewhere. If you have any question about any of this process, please just let me know and I'll help out.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is this a Gradle project or a Groovy project? What is it? I am trying to use Eclipse IDE, so I want to import. I got it from GitHub.
I was just waiting for everybody to download and unzip it, and then I'll tell you exactly what to do. It is a Gradle project, but you're going to have to run a couple of Gradle commands. And since you don't have Gradle installed, actually, might as well tell you the answer right now, but when everybody's done, I'll go over it with them. Since you don't have Gradle installed, now you're on Windows, you don't need the /. If you type Gradle W space build, the first thing it'll do is download and install Gradle, and then it will run the build script, which will download the dependencies and everything, run all the tests and everything. And then when we're done with that, we're going to run Gradle W, clean Eclipse and Eclipse, and that's going to generate the Eclipse project files, and we'll be able to import it into Eclipse. So that's the short answer. I'll go over it with everybody when they're done. Looks like Karen has it and Dave Johnson has it, and VNOT, it sounds like you downloaded it, right? Okay, and Jackie as well. Okay, so what you do is whatever directory you have it downloaded in, okay, I'm going to go to my directory where I have it. Okay, so here's what the directory looks like with all the stuff in it. See, there's now actually let me do just a moment. This is not what you're doing. I just want to make it look like yours. So I'm going to do a clean so I can get rid of all the extra information. So there is a build file called build.gradle here. This is what's going to run the whole show. And the source directory has all the source code in it. Now this build.gradle file, if I look at that, you'll see that it is currently it's going to use Groovy 2.0.6. And I did that on purpose because I don't think it's necessary now. But when I did this, it was needed because the Eclipse plugin for Groovy did not yet support Groovy 2.1. It only supported 2.0. Now I think it does, but this is still fine. So this little build file says we're going to download Groovy 2.0.6, and there's a Spock dependency for some of the tests, which will also download JUnit. I'm using an H2 database. That's one of the things I want to talk to you about tomorrow before we switch over to Grails is the SQL class, the Groovy SQL class, how we use that. And then it also uses an Apache Ant one. And what you'll do is that you'll type, now I have to type /, you don't. And I mean, that's because I'm on Unix. You're on Windows. You could just type Gradle W and then space build. Now when I run it, as you'll see, I already have all the dependencies downloaded, so it's just going to compile everything and run all the tests. Yours, it's going to start off by giving you all these dots, which is Gradle downloading itself, and then it will download the dependencies and it will do this whole process right here. Compile Java, there is no Java code in it. It's all Groovy code. And then there's test cases, and runs all the tests and builds everything. So it'll take a few minutes to download Gradle, but that'll only happen once. And by the way, we don't need Gradle for the Grails part of the course. This is just a standard mechanism for delivering Groovy code. And it's a very useful tool for anything in the Groovy ecosystem. If it's, you say, double click it to open. If you've already unzipped it, you will need to unzip it, okay? And then you will need to go to a command prompt so that you can type the Gradle W space build command, again, without the /. So the problem with Windows is that if you double click a zip file, it may open up a new folder visually, but doesn't actually extract the zip file. You probably need to right click on the zip file and say extract, and you could do extract to here or extract to a subdirectory or whatever you need. Then you'll need a command prompt in that directory. We're only going to use the command prompt to do this building and generating the files we need. We might play around with the command prompt a little bit for a Grails project, but not a lot. Then we'll use the IDE the rest of the way. So let me know if that is working, if it seems to be fine, if you have any problems. All the tests should pass. I certainly want to know if they don't pass. But this is the last thing we're going to do today. We're going to run, as I say in the README file, we're going to run this Gradle-W build command, and then when it's finished, assuming it works successfully, you'll run Gradle-W right here, clean Eclipse, and then Eclipse. And if you do both of those steps, not only will it compile all the code and everything, it will run all the test cases, build a test report, and generate the Eclipse project files. So tomorrow when we start up the IDE, we could just import this project as an existing Groovy project, and we'll be all set, ready to go. Is that finished for anybody yet, or is that still cranking away? The directory, oh great, wonderful. The directory where you run Gradle, in case it's not obvious, is the directory that has that build.gradle file in it. So if you unzipped it, you have to change directory into the intro Groovy, or whatever the download's called. You have to change directory into that so that wherever the file build.gradle is, that's where you want to run these Gradle tasks. As I say, when you have that done, you're all set. I do want to do this. I want to show you that when you're finished in the build directory, there'll be a build directory here. There's a directory underneath that called reports. And in reports, there's a directory called tests. And if you open up, now you don't have to type the word open. You could probably just type index. If I go index.html here, I get this guy. Let me merge it in with my existing windows here. See, it should look like that. That's your test report with everything. And this was underneath build/report/tests, and it was the index.html file. And you could see that, for example, if I go click on the JSON package, there's my Chuck Norris script tests, and there's online and offline, and you could click on standard output and see the code. Chuck Norris writes code with bugs. The bugs fix themselves. Yeah. And that's what it all looks like. Jackie, which part did you... Oh, the build was successful and you wanted the next step after that. Okay, then you want to type this. Again, don't worry about the... Oh, I got to go back to the root of the project. Just a minute. There. You want to type Gradle-W space clean Eclipse with a capital E and then the lowercase Eclipse. Now, the clean Eclipse isn't strictly necessary the first time, but this way you could run it multiple times. And that will download some source files and also build the Eclipse project files for this project. Is that clear what to do? It's in the README as well. This, by the way, only works correctly as it stands if you have open access to the internet. You know, if you're not going through something that would block it. That could potentially be an issue. If you're doing Gradle as part of your build projects in general, you can always set up a local repository or even flat files or directories or whatever. I'm using Maven Central for the overall dependencies. If you're not a Java person, that Maven issue probably has never come up. If you are a Java person, then you've no doubt heard of Maven, and hopefully, if you're lucky, that's not your build tool. Or is it? Excellent. Glad to hear it, Vinod. Did you do the Eclipse one as well, or just the regular build? Okay. Once you're finished with this, by the way, if it all worked out, yeah, okay, that's fine. Once you're finished with this, we are done for the day. Okay, I don't want to start a. Oh, the one thing I will ask you is if you installed the Groovy and Grails tool suite under program files. You don't need to, Jackie, you don't need to put in the / unless you're on Unix. If you're on Windows, you don't need the / You could, and clean Eclipse is one word, by the way. Again, for those of you who are trying to find it, here it's in the README on the web page. There's Gradle W. Clean Eclipse is one word, and then the word Eclipse right here, and so that comes after the build. This is the Eclipse. This generates the Eclipse project. Okay. We will import it into it tomorrow. Now, if you installed Groovy and Grails Tool Suite under program files, we may have to change that tomorrow. If you installed it anywhere else, we will not have an issue. We may not have an issue even under program files, but it's a possibility that we have to deal with that, and I figure we'll take care of that tomorrow morning. David, is your company a Maven site?
Yeah, we have actually both. Actually, three things: Ant, Maven, and then we're trying to get into Gradle now.
Well, my condolences about Maven, but hopefully Gradle will help you out. Vinod, as I say, tomorrow morning we'll import it, but if you'd want to do it ahead of time just to see what it looks like, it's just do a import as an existing project, because you generated Gradle W. You need to be in that same folder with there's a file in there called, here, let me show you what it is, where you just ran the build. There should be a gradlew.batch file, Gradle W in general. See, gradlew.bat is right here. So if you're in the same folder with that file, that should have been the same thing that you ran to do the build. But yeah, Vinod, you just import as an existing Eclipse project, because the Eclipse task automatically imported that. I mean, automatically generated the Eclipse project files. Now, the problem you may have, Vinod, if you try this, is whether do you have the Groovy plugin installed inside STS or not? Which is another thing we'll check tomorrow morning.
I have an issue when I run Gradle build.
Yeah, what do you get?
It's
actually, is this Vinod?
No, this is David.
Oh, this is David? Here, I'm going to do this. This is cool. I'm going to call Make Presenter here. I click on Make Presenter and I say OK. And now when you say OK to the resulting click, I'll be able to see your screen and I can see exactly what the issue is.
Yeah, but I actually used one computer to log into Go Meeting and another one is to do my stuff. So
okay, so you don't want, there's nothing for me to see then. All right, I'll go back to being the presenter. Okay, so tell me again what the issue was.
It's a fail to build a test Chuck Norris.
Okay, that sometimes fails because the website sometimes goes down. The Chuck Norris website goes down. But if it downloaded all the dependencies and that was your only error, I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh, is that right?
That may be just an internet issue. Jackie, did you get the Gradle W issue resolved? Oh, great. So, Vinod, you're all done. As I say, we'll do the import tomorrow morning. Jackie, I'm going to make you a presenter. Vinod, hang on. I'll answer your question in a moment. So, Jackie, you should have gotten a pop-up on your screen where you could say, okay. Now, oh, beautiful. That's right. There. Now I can see. Okay. Do a DIR, please, again. Okay. And if you type, see one of the issues that's happening is that that funny tilde and everything. Could you go up one folder, just cd ... Okay, now say cd space and try intro and then hit tab. Hit the tab key. There, now return. And now let's try the Gradle W space. Now, did you already do the build? You did. So Gradle W, no CD on that. Sorry, no CD on that. Just Gradle W space clean Eclipse, all one word with a capital E on Eclipse, space Eclipse, all lowercase. Missed it. ECLI. You're doing what I did all day long. Perfect. Just hit enter. Yeah, you didn't need the CD in front. That's all. And when this is going to download some of the ones that say source in it, and it's all finished. And now you're ready. You're ready to go. You're all done. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And see that I'm actually kind of glad we got a chance to do that because I wanted to show everybody how easy it is to flip from one screen to another so that I can help you debug or see the issues or anything like that on there. Now, Vinod, to answer your question, if all you wanted to do was Groovy and not Grails, then Eclipse would be fine with the Groovy plugin. Since we're planning to do Grails, STS or Groovy Grails Tool Suite has an additional plugin for Grails that we can install, and that will give us some special Grails functionality. So it's really up to you. I'm going to recommend STS or Groovy Grails Tool Suite. But if you really wanted to use just Groovy or just Eclipse with the Groovy plugin, then that would be okay. It's just you'd be running Grails commands from the command line. Okay? Anybody else need any assistance with any of this? Okay, whenever all that's finished, then we're set for today, and we'll start by tomorrow. No, you don't need to do the IDEA one unless you're using the IntelliJ IDEA IDE. That's just for the people who use that IDE, and we're not going to use that.